Hello everyone, good evening. This week we're going to be discussing a Parsha thought on Parsha's Va'era. Va'era is the first 7 of the 10 plagues that Hashem struck Egypt with before setting the Jews free. Now these plagues weren't just punishments against the Egyptians, they were meant to be divine lessons. Hashem says constantly, V'yedu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. Egypt will get to know me, they will get to know the truth through these plagues. That means they house and teach very profound lessons, as Chassidus and many Mefarshim explain at length. I want to focus mainly on the last and most powerful of the plagues in this week's Parsha, which is hail. And there was ferocious, strong hail that fell in Mitzrayim. And a uniqueness to this hail was that big boulders of hail, icy hail, came down from heaven, and inside, at the core of those ice balls, at the core of the hail, was fire. Now the question could be raised, what exactly is the point? Big boulders of ice flying from heaven will do enough damage. Why do we need to make an extra miracle? And Hashem doesn't make miracles in vain. Why would he need to put fire in the middle of this barad, in the middle of this hail, just for what? For aesthetics? What's the lesson that comes with that? So the Rebbe enumerates one lesson, and I'd like to expound on that and maybe spread it a little bit more. In Rishimis, this is in the Rebbe's personal notes that were found, that the Rebbe had a very profound writing on this plague, specifically the plague of hail, plague of barad. The core of what the Rebbe says is that what seems like ice on the outside often is due to profound fire on the inside. Relative to Egypt, the lesson is that some people just seem cold and indifferent towards other people. They're just not an emotional people, and they could justify to themselves, listen, I'm just not a caring person. And with that, get away with not connecting to people, not caring about people, not doing gemilas chasadim. And the Rebbe says you should realize that often a truth of such people is the ice on the outside doesn't mean they're not passionate people. It means all their passion is just turned inwards. They are so self-passionate that therefore they have no space left to be passionate to anyone else. There's ice on the outside with everyone else, but don't think that this person is just ice and he's not an emotional person. It often comes from profound passion and obsession about oneself that they're not able to have any passion or connection to anyone else. And that's one lesson. Maybe to extend this further, we could say this about life in general, that sometimes life seems icy and indifferent, and things happen to us that we don't feel the divine warmth, we don't feel Hashem's warmth towards us. Now, what we have to realize is behind that coldness, behind that cold shoulder we seem to be getting milmaila from Hashem, is often backed at the core by profound presence of Hashem in our life and lessons and growths we need to experience through this ice. Tanya explains this, that often in the hardest tragedies and hard times in life, Hashem isn't less present. On the contrary, Hashem is more present in a more intimate way. And with more zoning in and care than he is with the casual goodness, than when people experience casual goodness. Again, what comes to the surface, what we see is ice, but behind that ice there's a center of fire. And perhaps a third lesson that could be learned from this duality is that we meet Jews sometimes that seem completely indifferent. It could be Bachrim, it could be non-religious Jews, people that just don't seem to care spiritually. And naturally we try writing them off. Okay, they're disinterested, they have no connection, they're very far and distant. However, the truth often is that those that seem to be struggling and giving a cold shoulder towards Judaism is not necessarily because they don't care. In fact, the more you get to meet and connect to these people, the more you see the opposite. It's often from a profound fire and sensitivity to the truth. And when they see people not living that truth properly, not living that truth consistently, when they deeply believe in Hashem and they see that it doesn't always work out in the world, why do so many bad things happen if Hashem's here? Their real, sincere yearning for truth makes them need to develop a coating of ice. Now, I've shared this in the past, that with some students, some Bachrim in the past, that seem to be just indifferent and not so interested in the Judaism. I spoke to one of their parents once who was telling me that when this kid was younger, he was the most passionate, most connected, most caring Jew as a teenager that you found. And the pain of failing every so often in teenagehood just meant he couldn't live that fire so often, so he had to develop a coating of ice. But the ice is just a coating. We need to realize that there's a fire, there's a real soul, there's a real neshama behind that. And then, you know what could happen? The more, we don't need to try to chip away at ice and feel that we're dealing with an iceberg. We just need to tap into that inner passion and show that person that we see the inner fire. In all these cases, the moment we notice the fire and the moment we start fanning the fire in the middle, the more the ice will melt away. The more we notice it about people that seem challenged in the Judaism, and notice that the deep fire and connection they have to Hashem, possibly more than the average person, the more the ice will melt. And the more we notice Hashem in our lives, even when things seem icy, and notice how there's a deep, strong connection to Hashem, even in those moments, the more the ice will melt away from around it. Have a great Shabbos.